Testing, testing, can you hear me? I have no way of knowing, so I'm gonna have to check through other means. Wait just a minute. Okay, I was just doing some more setup. I'll get to you. Okay, and okay, it seems we're live. With a little bit of a delay ongoing, but we are live. Hello, everyone. Wait. I'm also trying to set up a simultaneous stream on Instagram because reasons. Okay, yeah, fine. Yeah. Okay, done. Okay, I'm assuming the live stream is up on Instagram as well, so let's get to it. Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Heir's Lair. I'm your host, Jonathan Taylor, and welcome to something that I do very rarely, namely a live stream. Hello to everyone who is watching live. Regardless of how many there are. Oh, okay, I have one. This is good. And I'm seeing there's a lot of stuff here in my the YouTube studio that I didn't know about. So okay, I'm gonna do something. Okay. I'm gonna leave a little greeting. Anyone who is online, at least on YouTube, can also leave a little greeting. If you're watching me on Instagram, then go ahead and leave me. I'm sure Instagram will tell me somehow. Not exactly sure how yet, but that doesn't matter. Anyway, welcome to the live stream, and I would like to once again thank Eden Solera for making this live stream happen. I've already made a whole bunch of videos about, or with the unwilling assistance, of Eden Solera, and namely all of these videos have aimed at answering questions that this person, who I've yet to ask concerning pronouns, so I'm just gonna assume they them, has questions that this person has asked on their Twitter profile. For that reason, I'll in this live stream, I'm going to be reading out and responding to all of the questions that Eden posed or asked her Twitter following over the course of the month of May. Why over the course of the month of May, after I already answered all of the questions that were asked over the month of April? Well, because just like the month of April, the month of May had a very special theme: government and politics within my within my world, or within the world of my story, my novel series. And well, I've put history and politics enthusiast in my in my Twitter bio. So given that April's theme was history, and now this month's theme is government and politics, well, what can I say? Eden just brought out that sweet catnip, and I just had to. Okay, I just had to. So let us begin with the first question. Introduce the nations or groups you'll be talking about and what type of government they have. Well, for the sake of this live stream, and for the sake of this question and the rest of the 30, I'm going to be talking about the five republics that my story is told within. As their name says, they are five countries which are ruled as republics, as in they have an elected government, as well as someone occupying a chief executive position. They are okay. They are actually well, okay. One of them is presidential, one of them is purely parliamentary, and I think the rest are semi-presidential. I haven't settled on the details yet, but that's kind of the gist of it. I might, if I might notice that a question would befit another society better, then I will answer it for that other society. That society being the Stockton Empire, which is a continuation of the predecessor state of the Five Republics from the alternate world my work in progress is taking place in. Because yeah, this is only the second book, and I'm already doing alternate storylines. Make of that what you will. Oh, also, I'm shivering as hell. Well, I'm nervous. I want to get this one. I want to get this done right. Anyway, moving on. Question 2. Who is the current leader of the nations involved in your story? How long have they been in that position? Well, most presidents in the five republics are elected for a term of either 4 or 5 years. I haven't really settled on that yet. Prime ministers for republics that aren't led by presidents have similar terms. And also, while I haven't settled on it yet, I'm pretty sure at least one president or at least one prime minister uh, is during their second reign or something like that. No third reigns yet. That that I'm certain about. As for the Stockton Empire, the current leader is Harold Stockton, who has been in his position for, I'll say, okay, well, how long he has been in his position depends on how you define it. If you define the Stockton Empire as having begun at the end of the previous war, the Interregnal War, then he has been around for 13 years. If you define it as the successor state of the previous empire, which has been reestablished during the war, well, then obviously it will be a bit longer, somewhere between 15 and 20 years. So yeah, I'm already doing various various interpretations, like a real life historian. Anyway, moving on. How are leaders chosen in your world? Third question. Well, for the five republics, they are voted in, or at least presidents get voted in. Prime ministers are appointed by their party. So if the representatives of their party or the party in general receives the most votes, then they get to appoint a prime minister. As for Harold Stockton, the emperor, the first emperor of the Stockton Empire, well, he conquered his position. Okay, next up, question 4. Is the current leader or leaders of the nation or nations in your story well liked? Or do most people want them gone, replaced? Well, I'm not gonna talk about the leaders of the five republics because they are kind of mixed. No one really wants them gone per se, but everyone has at least one thing that they really don't like about them. So, but yeah, again, it's more of a mixed bag. With Harold, on the other hand, he is more controversial. He has his stern group of followers who absolutely love him and absolutely. Okay, I have at least one person watching on Instagram. I'll okay. I waved at them. Moving on. As I said, current leaders. Well, with the five republics, it's a very mixed bag. With Harold, there is a core audience that is very loyal to him and very devoted to everything he does. There are a whole bunch of other people who just kind of don't care, and then there are at least two different resistance movements that try to oust him. And in case you're wondering, yes, those two resistance movements do clash in my work in progress. So keep an eye out for that. I also noticed I got some notifications on Twitter. Please wait until I check them quick. Okay, nothing directly relevant. Moving on. Fifth question. Is the leader of the nation or nations in... Oh, okay. If said leader is unable to rule for some reason, who takes over? Well, with semi-presidential republics, it's not the prime minister as you might assume. Rather the prime minister appoints a committee that then calls for the election of an interim president, and but otherwise in countries led by a prime minister, then there'll usually be a deputy prime minister who can rise to the occasion. In the case of Harold Stockton, or Emperor Harold of the Stockton Empire, well, that hasn't really happened yet, so he doesn't have a procedure in place. More than likely, if he did, it would probably be the High Lords who would appoint one of them as a temporary placeholder. Question 6: Is the currency in the nation nations in your story issued by the highest level of government, or is it handled on a more local level? This is a more complicated question. I'll get into it once I finish reading the rest. Or is it by a separate non-governmental group organization? And if so, who? Well, the government doesn't really regulate the currency per se. It's kind of a free-floating currency. So the government, if anything, just settles on some general rules through which the market operates most of the time. So there's no direct involvement. Currencies are already pretty well established. Their value is directly tied into various gemstones. So if one gem becomes more valuable, then the currency itself will also become more valuable somehow. You know. But that doesn't really happen. The value of gems is pretty uniform throughout the entire world. But the purchasing power of the currency kind of tends to fluctuate a little. Anyway, moving on. If magic exists in your world, question 7. Okay, so this is one I can work with. So if magic exists, does it play a part in the government of any country? It did in the past. I'll get to that. If so, are there specific roles in the government that require a person to have magic? Well, to anyone who has followed my YouTube career for a while, you will know that I actually built up a substantial history to my story, and as part of that history includes having a nobility that consisted entirely of magic users. And while there aren't any specific roles that require one to have magic, you were absolutely expected to have magic in order to carry out any sort of duties. With time, however, as it became clear that just that being able to do magic doesn't necessarily make you a better ruler, well then the requirements for magic have been relaxed, at least somewhat. Okay, moving along. Actually, they've been relaxed entirely. Question 8: What institutions are run by the government in your world? Schools, churches, hospitals, etc. Churches are pretty much autocephalic, meaning they run themselves. So there really isn't even any kind of so there is complete separation of church and state for the most part, at least and that is true both in the Empire and in the Five Republics. But otherwise, there are a lot of institutions under government oversight, but not necessarily administration, such as schools, such as hospitals, such as to some extent banks, to some extent power stations, um, and uh, uh, and other such places. Though the role in government is more of a is more oversight rather than direct involvement. Okay, question 9. Is religion tied to the government in your world at all? Or are they kept strictly separate? That has that has changed throughout history, to be honest. Currently, neither the Five Republics nor the Stacked Empire require one to be of a specific religion in order to perform duties within the government. However, that wasn't always true throughout the entire history of the predecessor empire. The uh, the Starniks and the Bialdimes, the first two imperial dynasties, did have a pretty strong emphasis on their own faith, so nature worship, or and which then eventually became hero worship. And I'm not going to go into the whole mess that led to that particular change of faith. Then came the Brandners, who were mostly secular, quasi-atheistic, and then that changed with the advent of the Korondani dynasty, who introduced the Gothic faith, and most often and stopped short of introducing obligatory of making the Gothic faith obligatory uh, to everyone within government. Though for the most part, people of the Gothic faith overwhelmingly formed important, the highest offices within government. Question 10. Is the military controlled by the government in your world, or is it something separate or relegated to the various local governments? This is kind of a tricky one to explain. The government is responsible for training and more large scale operations, but otherwise various local governments are in charge of logistics and scheduling and other such things. Think of it like a pirate ship. Like a pirate ship, most of the time it's and pretty much just does whatever, and any decision made is made mostly by consensus, except when they are attacking, or when they are in a combat situation. This is a pretty similar setup that the military has within this world, because while most local governments can administer their militaries as they wish within certain standards, in times of war, the ultimate authority does fall to central governments, at least within the Five Republics. Within the Empire, it's very detached, very hands off. I already mentioned the High Lords of the Empire. They pretty much dictate how the troops under them function. And if the emperor calls them up, then they have to show up. Next up, question 11. How are taxes handled in your world? Do people have to pay taxes to local governments and or leaders as well as the central federal government? Well, there aren't really. Okay, this one I have to rethink, because the Saxon Empire is arranged in a quasi federal system. However, the taxes people pay, people don't really pay taxes to the emperor himself. They mostly pay taxes to their local lords, and then those local lords pass their taxes up on higher. In terms of the Five Republics, however, most of the time certain taxes are paid locally, and some taxes are paid on a more on a higher level, so to speak. Okay, moving on with the 12th question. Does the leader of your world's government have a large number of advisors, or do they only have a small number of highly trusted ones? Well, most of the five republics have a parliament system, so if you're willing to count all the parliamentarians as advisors, then yes, there are lots of advisors. However, if you think that is a little bit too disconnected to count as advice, well, all countries within the five republics also have you know ministerial cabinets, and therefore people who can interact with the leader of a government of a nation and devise certain strategies. And also, as far as and as far as the Stagnant Empire is concerned, there are the High Lords, but Harold doesn't really interact with the High Lords per se. He mostly interacts with his own cabinet of ministers, who are indeed his advisors. There are about 7 of them, and they are handpicked, not for blind loyalty, but for diligence. He is he is very keen on having professionals, not bootlickers around him. Question 13. How much power do local governments have in your world? Are they mainly symbolic, or do they have more power than the central/federal government? Well, it's for the most part it's pretty balanced. As in, if the as in the local governments do have their power and are indeed the most visible when it comes to being just a rando off the street. However, in terms of central directives, centrally granted directives given from something akin to a national government, well then they have to follow those. There are some limits as to what shapes these national directives can take, but the ones that do comply with those limits do need to be followed. Okay, next up, question 14. Are there certain things that the government in your world guarantees all citizens can have for free, regardless of their social status? Yes. If so, what things are guaranteed? Well, for perhaps obvious reasons, the five republics guarantee a little bit more. The right to education, the right to fair trial, the right to the right to universal basic healthcare or more complex healthcare if it is really needed, and also the right to and also more modern rights, such as the right towards meaningful employment, however you were to define that. Within the Stagnant Empire, you're only really guaranteed a right to an education. Everything else you kind of have to either do for yourself or rely on less central institutions to provide for you. Also, there are the obvious ones: life, liberty, etc. Anyway, question 15. How well balanced is the power of the government in your world? Define well balanced. This is a very precarious wording. What measures are in place to keep that power balanced, and are they effective? Oh, I see. So it's what the U.S. Americans typically refer to when they talk about checks and balances. Well, the checks and balances don't really start at the level of the government. They start at levels outside of government, namely civil servants, and there are a whole bunch of them that are directly that are called up specifically to be watchdogs for the government. They are appointed by local council, And in case you're wondering, the local governments also have watchdogs appointed by the national government. So yeah, those could collude, but they so far haven't. At least in the Five Republics, because in the Empire, the High Lords can pretty much just do whatever within reason. Within reason, I'll say that much. What exactly that reason is, or how it is defined, well, let me just say the Emperor defines it, and the High Lords generally stick to what the and generally stick to the decisions of the Emperor. Question 16. Are there economic assistance programs set up by the government in your world? With the Five Republics, yes. With the Stacked Empire, not really. If so, how hard is it for people to get that assistance? Well, not that hard actually. A lot of the offices where, at least in the Five Republics, or at least in 3 of the Five Republics, are pretty much open all the time. So if you really need assistance, you can walk in and ask for it. Also, give your details. You'll be verified pretty soon, and if your claims are true, then that's really all you need to know. That's really all the government needs in order to really provide you with assistance. Because let's just say people who don't have to worry about tomorrow make for better, happier citizens, and ones who are less likely to break the law out of desperation. Question 17. Are there multiple different factions in the government of your world? Well, there are more. Each of the Five Republics has multiple parties, if that's what you mean, and also those parties aren't necessarily ideologically unitary. But as far as the Empire is concerned, well, as I've said, there is the imperial power structure, and then there are various resistance movements. So there is at least to some extent some factionalization. If so, are they all openly known, or are there some that are secret / attempted to be kept secret? For the most part, in the Five Republics, the factions are known, so they are either a matter of public record, or they are open secrets. An example for that would be the Green Dawn, who are the villains of the who will be villains within the series. They already made their appearance in my debut, and will show up in future stories as well. But otherwise, when it comes to factions within the Five Republics, there are political parties who all have their own ideological bend, and who all want to implement certain policies. As far as the Empire is concerned, I already said there are the people who support the Empire. There are various there are some Republican-leaning factions, i.e., people who want to vote for their heads of state. So not just some parliament that may or may not exist. And then there are also resistance movements, which are more proactive in how they want to implement change within the Empire. Next question 18. How openly do the nations / cities in your world trade with each other? Quite regularly. Do any of their governments restrict trade on specific items or from certain places? Or blanket restrictions on everything / everywhere? Well, within the Five Republics, there is pretty much free trade, not unlike the EU. Those are really my the EU was really one of my role models when it came to conceiving of the Five Republics. The other one was NATO for plot related reasons. While they trade with each other quite freely, when it comes to trade with other parts of the world, that trade is mostly only done with items that fit certain quality standards. Blanket restrictions are quite rare and only reserved for stuff that is considered very dangerous. Okay, next up, question 19. Are there any government jobs in your world that require specialized education? If so, which jobs and what kind of education is required? Well, I think I've already mentioned civil service, which for the most part, which is appointed partly by elected officials, but to a much more substantial extent by merit, or rather, you have to prove you have some degree of merit, in this case, specialized education, in order to be eligible for for the jobs in and of themselves. Also, given it's been touched upon previously, and it is also the focal point of my book, when it comes to the military, if you want to go up the ranks, you absolutely need a specialized education. If you are to become, say, a commissioned officer, and I think I've already mentioned this time and again. The MCs of my first book, Heir to the Empire: Next Generation, are all officer cadets who are attending a specialized university for future commissioned officers. Moving on, question 20. Do the government leaders in your world ever listen to petitions from citizens, or do they remain distant/detached? Well, within the Stacked Empire, your mileage may vary. Your local lord might be fine with it, but the higher up the ladder you go, the more apathy you will find. Within the Five Republics, well, again, it's a little more. It's equally. It's a little more ambiguous. There are, and most of all, the ambiguity doesn't really depend on the level of government. You could have some, low-level clerk who doesn't really care about petitions at all, or you could have a president who devotes themselves to always looking at petitions and doing their best to implement them. So you really run the gamut. For the most part, I'll say somewhere between 60 and 70% of petitions do indeed get listened to. Okay, I was just checking checking how many people watched. Question 21. We're 2/3 of the way through. Are there any elected positions in the government of your world? Yes. If so, which? That depends on which of the worlds we're talking about. Are there restrictions on who is allowed to vote? Well, within the Five Republics. Oh, hello, more people, more people watching me on Instagram. Okay, so as I was saying, elected position in the government. Within the Five Republics, pretty much every government position is elected. Or, okay, it depends. Some judges in certain places are elected, others are appointed either by people from outside the judicial branch or by their future peers. That is an option. But aside from that, pretty much every position within the government is elected. I've already said I have parliaments. I already said I had presidents, and most of these positions are appointed via universal voting. So if you're over 18 and are of sound mind, you can vote. Yes, even if you are in prison. Funnily enough. Okay, next question. Question 22. Are there age restrictions/requirements for people in government positions in your world? If so, are they only for certain positions or are they blanket restrictions? Well, again, this very much depends on the position we're talking about, because pretty much everyone realized that you need some level of seniority for for certain jobs. When it comes to local jobs, for example, the mayor of your town, if you want to be mayor of your town when you're 18, you can go ahead and run for office. No one's gonna no one's gonna bat an eye at that. Similarly, uh, as for higher offices, there are some countries that will allow you to become allow you to become a representative in the lower house of the parliament once you're 18, but others require you to be at least anywhere between 21 and 25. For the second house of parliament, uh, there are some places that place there are some areas, some countries that place no age restrictions, but place some level of experience restrictions, something like at least at least 2 terms in any other form of public office. Or there are some that or there are some that place again a certain minimal age, say 30. And when it comes to being in charge of an entire country, well, again, some restrictions might be in place, others may or may not. I can think of one country that says the president has to be at least 35 at the time of inauguration, and another that just says the president needs to have some level of administration experience. Importantly, that does not have to be within public office. So if you were a manager for 80 years at whatever company you worked for, and you did fairly well, that is enough to qualify you to that would be enough to qualify you to run for president. There is, however, an upper age limit when it comes to running for office. Namely, if you're old enough to retire, so to receive a pension, then you're out of office. Like, that's just it. Also, you can't run for office if you are likely to reach the age of retirement during your term. Okay, that was a very long and very complicated answer. I hope I didn't lose any of you. Okay, I lost some people on Instagram. Never mind. Question 23. Are there different factions/political parties in your world? Yes. If so, how many? That depends. How do they interact with each other in order to get things done? Or prevent things getting done? I like this little, I like the fact that you added this. Okay, as for the actual answers, well, I'm gonna keep the empire out of it because I've already presented everything that would be of note there. As far as the five republics are concerned, pretty much each of the 5 republics has its own electoral system, and each of these has a specific number of parties that run anywhere between 5 and 22. Keep in mind, not all of the 22 in the countries where there are 22 do actually have the coverage to where they would really gain a kind of following that would net them that level of influence. But they are still eligible to run. As for how they interact with each other, well, it's mostly sitting in at various it's mostly sittings and discussions, like kind of how you imagine any kind of sitting parliament to interact. You have law proposals, you have discussions, you have amendments. Then laws either get passed or they don't get passed. Simple as that. You could form blocks to oppose the voting of a specific law, but given most countries will have at least 5 parties, it is quite unlikely that you'll really be able to form a blog that is able to create that, and that stable a level of opposition. Okay. Moving along. Question 24. How does the government in your world deal with disapproval/disagreement from people not involved in the government in any way? I'll get to that. Do they attempt to stop those people from speaking their opinions, or do they ignore it? Well, within the Empire, it's kind of a mixed bag when it comes as far as dealing with protests is concerned. Some lords might care, but some others might just might just call their military action in place just to in order to disperse the protest. As for the five republics, well, protests are mostly heated. I'll say about the same 60 to 70% margin that petitions would. What does it mean to heat? Well, it could mean implementing a certain law. It could mean having a certain candidate for a position get appointed to that position, or it could mean demoting a candidate who has or it could mean demoting someone who has proven incapable. Moving along, question 25. Have there been any revolutions throughout your world's history that successfully brought about change in the government? Yes. If so, did those changes last? Well, they kind of lasted about a dynasty or two each. I already mentioned that in my video on the history of the empire, and even the political history of the empire, which I think I'll link somewhere, at least once maybe. And the basic idea is that pretty much every dynasty brought with it its own style of governance. The Starniks were charisma-driven conquerors. The Bjaldimes were conscientious bureaucrats. The Brantners were stoic military. The Korondani were more heartfelt diplomats, and the five republics are more I will say closer to what we would consider genuine leadership than any of the others. So they have more of an active listening policy in place. Next up, question 26. Can government officials in your world be accused of crimes, or are they protected because they work in the government? If they can be accused, can anyone accuse them, or only other government officials? Well, within the five republics, government officials are not immune from almost any form of prosecution. Whether or not that prosecution is to be taken seriously is, however, left up to a specific branch within the civil service that investigates that. Most of the time, the civil service is genuinely reliable when it comes to that question. Or at least that is the case in general within the five republics. In the Stacton Empire, pretty much anyone can make an accusation, but whether or not that accusation will actually follow through depends on whoever is the lord of that area. So it could be. So it might happen, or it might not happen. That actually is the reason one of the resistance movements against the empire showed up, or manifests itself. But more on that you'll have to find out for yourselves. And I'm looking over there because that's where I set up the cell phone. Sorry, YouTube. I I'll try to look more towards you as well. There are only like there are only 5 questions left, but still I'll do my best. Question 27. Does the leader and or other high-ranking government official ever directly address the people as a whole in some way, or are people reliant on rumor/observation to figure out what's happening? Well, there are regular speeches and speaking events to to let people know what's going on. Also, most houses of parliament are open during the mm, debates. So people can very much see what is what is going on. Also, various speeches do occur at public occasions and the like. At least within the 5 republics. When it comes to the stacked empire, there is a lot more reliance on stuff like decrees to figure out what the what is going on and what the situation moving forward will be. At least as far as higher ranking government is concerned. Local government it's more of a mixed bag. Some people go directly to their constituents and interact with them. Others build some distance from each other, build some distance towards their followings or the general citizenry. Question 28. Are there any things known only to the leader of your nation's government? If so, what sort of things? How is that information passed on when the leadership changes? Well, one of the most important things that is known only to the that is only known to the leader of the nation's government are various questions concerning national security. Because of the way I set up my military system, there are no 4-star generals or admirals or marshals. So that position is occupied entirely by the head of state. However, in order to occupy it effectively, said head of state will need to be briefed on what is going on, and that's how it generally goes. There are various briefs that ensure that level of and the level of continuity necessary for various government operations to function. Okay, next question. Has the government in your world always been the same type system? Hell no. Or has it gone through multiple different types over the course of history? Well, I think I've already mentioned. First of all, the 5 republics are a successor state of the Nordan Empire, and the Nordan Empire has had a few iterations and changes throughout its 1,000-year history. And also the Stacked Empire has taken some aspects of the Nordan or later Norsten Empire and adapted them to suit its interests. Before that, there have been various kingdoms or various tribes that have occupied those same territories and that have made laws. But we're talking like 1,500 years in the past, so their direct relevance is iffy. Let's put it that way. Next up, question 30. Are there any alliances between different nations in your world? If so, are they new, brief, or have they lasted for generations? Well, the 5 republics, first of all, are allied. They are part of a both commercial and a military alliance, and have been so for a generation at the time of this series beginning. The Stacked Empire, however, is pretty much unaffiliated. It keeps diplomatic ties to other countries, but that's about it. And last but not least, question 31. What is your favorite aspect of the government in your world? Or a favorite character who is involved in a government in some way? How nice of Eden to end this month on a personal touch. I think my I think my favorite aspect of government is specifically that that aspect of no immunity for the for representatives or uh, generally for government representatives. It doesn't matter if you're part of the government. You are in charge. You have to follow the law. You have to follow the laws you have to follow the laws you make you have uh, or that you have accepted just as much as any other citizen. So I so yeah, I pretty much have to. So yeah, that is something that I very much enjoy and that I think mm, would be of benefit to become more common. As for a favorite character, well, it's hard to say because she only really shows up once. But I'm gonna mention Mignon. She actually appears both in the alternate world as one of Harold's ministers within the Stackton Empire, and she will appear in the mainline world at some point later in the series. I can't mention in what role yet because spoilers. And yeah, that was it. Those were the those were the questions of those were the questions Eden Solera asked on her on their Twitter account over the month of May. Coincidentally, they have started a new thread over the month of June, and this time it's going to be society slash social customs. So if that sounds interesting to you in any way, then go ahead and give them a follow. I think I'll link their damn brain fart. I'm gonna link their details in the description below, unless I haven't already. Anyway, that was it for this video or this live stream. Thank you for your attention. If you enjoyed it, then please leave a like, maybe even share it wherever you think other people will enjoy it. If you have anything you'd like to comment on on any part of this live stream, then go ahead and do just that. And if you want to see when my next videos get released, well then please subscribe or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. My own novel, Heir to the Empire: The Next Generation, is available at most major book retailers under a master link in the description down below, right past my social media, which I also suggest you check out should you feel so inclined. Until next time, I am Jonathan Taylor, and this has been The Heir's Lair.